Okay, community partners, welcome back to our second training session. Okay, I'm joined here. You can't see her on the camera, but Katie Coldiron, our digital archivist, is manning the camera today. And today is going to be a pretty quick one. It's going to be a really simple one. We're going to be talking about an alternate audio recording technique that you can use that some of you have ordered and have, which is the Tascam field recorder. Okay, that you can see right over here. So this is a really cool option if you need to record a couple different voices, if maybe there's a couple different ways that you might be using it. So you might need to interview more than one person. So you might have the Rode wireless system, but you want to add one more person to the conversation, or you just want to use a different method that's a little bit more mobile, then you might want to use the field recorder. Okay, so there's a couple different ways that you can use this, but particularly this is really going to be used if you want more than one other person on your interview, right? So because the Go Wireless 2 lapel system can only handle an interviewer and one other speaker, right? Or two people if you don't want to have the interviewer mic'd up, right? So this is going to be a really cool option for that, and we're going to go over how to use it, a couple functions, the external buttons on the outside, because it looks a little bit complicated. It looks like it can be kind of like complex, and it looks kind of like a scary alien technology, but it's not very scary. We're going to go over how to use it, what it looks like. If you listen to any of our Goombay Festival podcasts that we put out recently, it's the Coconut Grove Stories podcast. It's out everywhere. I used a Tascam recorder for most of those interviews since we had such a large number of people, being interviewed, especially on the Goombay roundtable episode, right? So a couple other things that we're going to look at today besides the actual recorder is that we have a XLR cable right over here that we're going to use for one way to use the Tascam field recorder, and we have a microphone. So this one in particular is a reporter microphone, a Rode reporter microphone, but this can be any microphone. It doesn't have to be this big microphone. This is just one that we have in one of our oral history kits, but it can be any microphone that you want to attach to it. But don't get too confused about that. You don't have to use a microphone with this. It has two microphones attached. But we're going to get into all of that. Okay, so first we're going to take a look at the actual buttons and all the external facing buttons that we see here. And then we're going to go over into the internal, some of the menu settings that you might want to set, and how to actually start recording on this actual Rode Wireless 2 recorder. Okay, so we're going to transition over to a tabletop setting so you all can see this. But first I will say that the number one thing that you're going to want to do when you first start doing this is that this does run on batteries. Right, so we have regular, AA batteries here. It runs on three batteries, right? So pretty simple. And I've had these batteries in here since the Goombay Festival in June, and this is still running. It's only lost 1 bar of battery, so it doesn't use that much battery, which is really good. And the other thing that I will just point out before we start looking a little bit to the details of this is that there is an SD card slot right here that you can see in the center, right there. So you can flip this down and you can insert your SD card here. Okay, first and foremost before you start. It's a little bit tricky sometimes to get it out, which is a good thing because you really don't want your SD card to be falling out, right? So you can flip that out. We have an SD card inserted here, right? You can use whatever works for you. This is one of the SD cards we have for our oral history kits as well. So you pop that in there, right? It clicks right into place and you're good to go. So first and foremost, before you start recording, you're going to want to, make sure that you have the batteries in there, obviously, so it turns on and it's good to go. And you're going to want to make sure that you have your SD card loaded in there, and then you're going to be good to go. You'll see this screen as well. So I guess before we go into there as well, I'll show you also how to turn it on. Okay, so the first thing that you're going to want to do, right, when you get this out of the package and you insert your SD card and you insert your batteries, you're going to have a blank screen right over here. If you click the home button, there's a little button right over here that says home, and it's got a little power button next to it. So we're going to be using this button a lot. It's going to be one of the most used buttons, obviously, because we're going to be going back to the home screen more often than not. But you can press and hold that down to turn your Tascam field recorder on. There we go. Okay, and now we're going to get into some of the buttons, some of the user settings, and then we'll be good to go. Okay, so let's move on over to our tabletop. Okay, everybody, so we're going to be taking a little bit of a closer look into the Tascam field recorder. This is specifically the DR-40X field recorder, which most of you have ordered and have. But some of you might have a little bit of a different setup. Some of you have a Zoom recorder as well. But for the most part, it will be a really similar setup, a really similar way that these field recorders work, okay? So first, let's take a look at some of the external buttons on here. So if you flip it to the side, you'll see over here that we have a couple different buttons and a couple different things to look at. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to look at is over here. We have the line input. Okay, so here's where you're going to select the different inputs for your mic, the different mics that you're going to be using. Okay, so there's a line input, a mic input, and then the mic plus the phantom power input. Okay, really most of the time what this means is that you're really going to be in the middle on the mic input. Okay, you're not really going to be using the other inputs too much. So the line input over here on this side is really more for mixers and kind of bigger recording equipment. Okay, and this is kind of if you're connecting to a mixer, maybe like a DJ's mixer or something like that. A lot of wedding photographers use this, but you're not going to be using this. We're going to be using this for like oral history, purposes. So really you're going to be in the middle mic input. The mic plus phantom power input is if you're using things like a condenser microphone, right? So some microphones need phantom power, which is just like a little boost of power, some extra power to work, but you're really not going to be using this mic plus phantom power very often unless you have a condenser microphone, right? So you'll either be in the middle mic position or mic plus phantom power. Right over here, all the way at the top, we have our input jack for our headphones. So like I said in our previous training, I really recommend that you always monitor the audio levels on any of the recordings that you do. So definitely utilize that that headphone input jack. Right over here in the center, we have the hold button. Okay, so that's pretty self-explanatory. You flip it up if you don't want any of these buttons to work while you're recording. So if you leave this on a table or you hand this to somebody, you don't want any of the buttons or the settings that you've already selected to be messed with, then you can switch that up to the hold position, and then it'll kind of disable any of the buttons from functioning while it's being operated. And then last but not least, here on this side we have the input levels. Okay, so we have a plus and a minus here. So this is similar if you watched our Camcorder and Go Wireless 2 training, and I spoke a little bit about mic clipping, and we spoke a little bit about raising the sensitivity or lowering the sensitivity of a microphone when you hear a speaker, right? This is basically what this is for. So here you can raise or lower the sensitivity, the input level, of a microphone based on a speaker. If they speak a little bit lower, you'll want to raise it. If they speak a little bit louder, you'll want to lower it to make sure that the mic isn't clipping. What does clipping mean? We also looked at that in our last training video, but basically what that means is when you're kind of like overloading the microphone, when the mic sensitivity is too low for the amount of volume you're inputting into the microphone. So it's kind of like when someone screams into a microphone and you hear that crackling, you're kind of overbearing the system, and we don't want that, right? So we want to make sure that we have an appropriate mic input level so that we can hear our speaker clearly and cleanly, right, and have a good, nice recording of our oral history. Flipping over to the back, we have our speaker in the back. So this is for if you're playing if you're looking at some of the recordings that you've already recorded and you want to hear them. There's a speaker built into the field recorder. Over here, similar to our camcorder that we saw in our previous training video as well, we have a screw mount for a tripod. So they do have like specific tripod inserts for field recorders if you want to place it somewhere and leave it there. A lot of people do that as well. We have a tripod socket for this on the back, or you could just hook it up straight to a tripod. It might look a little weird because it'll sit flat on the tripod, but it works. So you can hook this up to a regular tripod like the one that we saw yesterday. And then over here we have our battery compartment. So we saw this a little bit earlier, right? But this is where you input the batteries, slide that in, right? Now we'll look at this side, at the other side of the field recorder. Okay, so like I showed earlier, right over here is where you will insert your SD card. You flip this down and then insert the SD right over there. And then this is our USB Lightning port. So this is similar to the camcorder that we spoke about yesterday as well. This is where you can connect a USB Lightning cable and connect it straight to your computer and export files straight through the Tascam without removing the SD card. Most of the time, I'll recommend just removing the SD card just for like easier transfers of files, right? But you can also do it through the actual USB Lightning cable. On the bottom of the Tascam, we have two inputs. These are very, very important. Okay, so this is for microphones. Okay, so if you want to add external microphones, you can add external microphones, and we'll show that later today. So you can add two external microphones and have two separate people speaking here, and we'll go over that. We'll go over that later today, but really, really important option to have there. And then up on top, these two things that look kind of like antennas up here, these are two microphones. Okay, so these are the internal microphones that come with the actual Tascam field recorder, and you can flip them over here. This is kind of like mono setting. You can flip them outwards to capture two different audio files, right, to have it in a stereo setting. So you can lay this on a table, have a speaker on both sides of the actual recorder, and capture two stereo files of this, right? So two individual files, which is really, really cool. Really, really cool, and really cool options with this, and really good microphones that are already inside of this actual system. So these up on top are very, very good microphones. So now we're going to look at the front, the front of the Tascam field recorder. We have a couple buttons that are really important, and I'm showing you here really all the things that we're going to be using. First and foremost, there's a couple things that I might not go over in this video, but that really for the purposes of recording oral history, I'm going to show you all the buttons that we're going to be using. First up over here, like I mentioned before, is our home button. You press this down to turn off the Tascam. You press it to turn on the Tascam. Also, if you go into, for example, if you hit record mode and you're messing here into some of the menu systems, but you want to go back to the regular home, like recording side of the Tascam, you can hit the home button and it'll take you right back to the home screen. We have the play button as well. If you're viewing or listening to some of the recordings that you've already recorded on here, we have the record mode, okay, that we'll go into as well. So once you're ready to record, you can hit the record button and it'll take you. You can see that it's picking up the audio from my voice here already, and it'll start flashing. If it's flashing, you're not recording. Once it's a solid red button, it's a solid red ring around the record button, that's how you know you're actually recording, okay? And you'll see that the actual time start ticking here. That tells you how long you've actually been recording. Okay, but for now, we're not going to look at that. Down here on the bottom, we have some quick selections. So we have the menu button, okay, that'll take you to some of your menu settings. We have the quick selection button if you want to delete something, overwrite, divide any of the audio files quickly. We have the mixer button. You're really not going to be using this. This is really if you're mixing or using an audio mixer. We have this lower button actually that I'm not too sure what does, but you don't have to really use that button. It's totally okay. We're not really going to use that. And then we have the rewind, forward and backwards rewind button. If you're listening to an audio file on here, you can go forward, you can go backwards, you can, listen to something again, check a specific part of an audio file, right? And then we have the plus and minus buttons that lower or raise the volume of the speaker, not to be confused with the input level, right? The plus and minus for the input level. This is for the speakers, right? If you're listening back to a recording you've done, this is for the sensitivity of the mic. So really, we're going to be using this much more than we're going to be using the plus and minus over here. Okay, but those are all of the buttons, right, on the front of the Tascam field recorder. So this is kind of like a quick overview of the external buttons. Now we're going to go over some menu settings, and then we're going to show you how to actually record on the Tascam. Okay, so now let's go into some menu settings, some things that you might need to know, okay? So if we go into the menu, right, we click the menu button. The first thing that we're going to want to do is click on the record settings option, right? Here is the format that I've seen that works the best when you're exporting and using these audio files. We're always going to want to be at WAV files for 24-bit WAV files, right? That's just an easier file to manage, an easier file to input into different editing softwares. So you're going to want to always be at the WAV 24-bit setting for format. For sample size, 44.1K or 48K is standard really when it comes to recording, audio recording. So either one of those, you'll be fine. It doesn't have to be too complicated, but as long as you're at these two formats, that's really what we're going to look at here, the format and the sample size, the sample rate, you'll be good to go. So I leave it there, and that's usually how we record using the Tascam field recorders. Everything else we just have off so we can control everything manually and everything's good to go. The other thing, really, that's pretty much everything that we're going to look at in the menu here. Let me see. I think also, oh yeah, if we go into system, Right now I've got the backlight on. If you do want to change like the backlight settings, I've got the backlight on always so you all can see what I'm doing, but you can also turn that off to conserve battery, right? So you can change it to 30 seconds, 15 seconds, 10 seconds, whatever you'd like off. But I'm keeping it on always for now just so you all can see the actual screen. And then we have the battery type that we're using is the alkaline batteries, right? You can change the contrast of the screen. So these are just user preference settings, but for the most part, that's all we're really going to look at or use here on this side of the recording. Okay, so now we're going to hit the home button. Okay, and like I said before, the other thing that you're going to want to look at is record mode. So this is how you're actually going to be using the Tascam field recorder, and this is probably the most important part of the Tascam setup. So there's a couple different ways that you can record. You've got dual, you've got 4-channel, you've got overdub, you've got overdub, 4-channel, dual stereo, mono, right? So typically what we use and what I use is that I'm always on stereo mode, right? You can also use the dual mode, right? Those two are kind of the two most common ways to use the Tascam. The dual mode records 2 actual recordings of what you recorded, one regular recording and then one softer safety recording, right? You can do that as well, and you can change over here if you choose the dual. You can go to source and change where you're actually capturing audio. So if you leave it on internal stereo, you're going to be recording audio from these 2 speakers up here on top, right? Which are good speakers and you'll get good sound from there. But if you want to connect some microphones, you can go ahead and switch that over to external, right? External left or right. So we have the left, external microphone and the right external microphone. So if you're using microphones, you can use that. Right, external. If you're only using one microphone, you'll go to external in left. You can also go to external in right, or you can hit internal mono as well if you just want to record one audio track. So mono means that both of the tracks that you'll record from these 2 microphones will be the exact same track. If you go to a stereo track, that means that both of these microphones will be picking up a separate track, right? So if you got 2 speakers, I really recommend recording in stereo. But my favorite way of recording on the Tascam is just in regular stereo mode. Okay, so if you just go to stereo mode and then you change the source to either internal or external with left and right, or external. I usually have it when I'm using microphones, I leave it in external in left and right, right? So whether you connect a microphone in the left or the right, it'll be picking up the audio there. Or if you don't want to use any microphones, you can just leave it on internal stereo and use these 2 microphones at the top, which, like I said, are really good options. You can really just set this on a table like this, right? Hit stereo, hit internal audio recording, right? So leave these settings, hit record, and just plop this on a table, right? Have your speakers around the table and it'll pick up really, really beautiful audio. You can switch this over to stereo mode like this, right? And you'll get this option coming over here. So change the mic direction, right? You can hit enter yes, and it'll be picking up stereo audio now, right? So you can really just leave this on the table and have your speakers sit around the recorder, and it'll pick up really nice audio. This is for like a different setup if you don't want to use the Rode Wireless 2 setup, right? Or you can have a mono channel, right? You can hit enter as well. We're changing the mic direction again, right? And just plop this on the table and get a mono recording, right? So it's a really easy way of just picking up and recording a nice, easy, clean audio recording, right? You can just leave this on a table, put it on a tripod, and really you're good to go, right? But that's the most important part. I usually leave it on stereo and capturing either internal stereo audio or external stereo audio, right? So let's say for right now that we're not using any external microphones, right? And we're using the internal microphones, right? So we're going to use this, we're going to leave it here, and we're going to hit home. So now we've selected our recording mode, and now we're ready to record, right? So let's pretend like we have our speakers standing around this table, right? What are you going to do? So you're going to hit the record button. Right now there's no flashing, right now there's nothing, we're just at the home section, right? If you actually look at the screen, at the home section, we're actually looking at some previously recorded audio that I have on this memory card, right? So you'll be able to press play, and then you'll be able to like listen to the actual audio that you recorded, right? So you'll see it's kind of jumping up and down here. I turned the speakers off, that's why you can't hear it. But once you're ready to record, all you do is you hit this record button, right? So you'll hit record, and you'll see that it's listening to us now. You can see the internal microphones are picking up what I'm saying. It's bouncing up and down based on my speech at the moment, right? So once you're ready to record, you have your speakers sitting around the stereo, and what I recommend always, like I said during the Go Wireless 2 tutorial, is to listen to them. You know, go to this mode and then see if they're clipping. You know, what does clipping mean? So for example, if I turn up the sensitivity of our microphone, right? If I go up a lot, you're gonna see that those two audio files are getting really, really close to the edge of this, right? And if I speak really loud, you'll see that it hit the clip right over there. It hit the edge of the audio signal. So that means that I'm overbearing the microphones, right? I'm overbearing the microphones here, and it can't handle the loudness that I'm speaking at, the volume that I'm speaking at. So if you have someone that speaks a little loud, you can go ahead and lower the mic sensitivity, right? So let's like lower that down to 65, and you can see that it's a much more manageable, input level. And you can monitor this with headphones. So you can really take a look at this with headphones and see what works for you and what sounds good, right? But what we really always want to avoid is the clipping, right? So let's say we've selected a good input level and we're ready to record, right? You can go ahead and hit this one more time. And once it turns a solid red color and you see the time start ticking, you're recording. So you're off to the races and you're ready to go. You can leave this on a table. You can you can put this on a tripod, right? And just have your speaker speak and have the oral history start. You can start asking your questions and jump right into the interview, and you'll be recording audio right then and there, right? So whenever you're done, you can go ahead and press this button one more time, and you can see that it stopped recording, and hit the home button, right? So now you're home, you've captured your audio, and you're good to go. So that is really the gist of the Tascam Field Recorder. Once you finish your recording, you can pop out the SD card, you can plug in the USB Lightning cable, and you can extract the audio that you've recorded. You can put it into an Adobe software, you can put it into any video or audio editing software you have, and get it and mess with it with whatever you'd like. You can, cut and copy and paste whichever parts. Something that we always do with oral histories is that we ask our narrators if there's any parts that they need to redact or don't want to be included in the oral history, always giving the power back to the narrators. And if there is, you can edit that, after the fact, which is really, really good. But that's the Tascam Field Recorder in a pinch, right? If you need to record something or you have multiple people you'd like to record, that's the best way to do it. But before we sign off, I will show you one more thing when it comes to connecting an external microphone that I almost forgot, and then we'll wrap up. Okay, everybody, so now we're going to talk about inputting an external microphone, okay, like this one. Okay, it doesn't have to look like this. This is the Rode interviewer microphone, right? But you can connect any microphone here. I know some of our partners have bought even condenser microphones, and the only thing that would change for that is that you would switch it down to the phantom power, right? But for right now, we're going to switch over. We're going to leave it at mic, at the regular microphone input. We don't need phantom power for this specific microphone, right? So what do you do in this case if you want to use an external microphone? First up, we're going to go back into record mode, right, that we see here, and we're still in stereo mode, right? And we're going to go down to the source, and we're going to change it to external in left or right, okay? So we're going to hit the home button, we're going to go back home, and we're going to connect our XLR cables to the bottom of the Tascam Field Recorder. Oh, sorry, that was the wrong side. Oh no, that is the right side. So we're going to align the pins. So you see that there's 3 pins here at the bottom, right? And there's 3 pins here. So we're going to align the pins and connect the XLR cable to the field recorder. I'm not going to entangle it now, just for tidiness sake. We're also going to align the pins at the bottom of our microphone with the other side of the XLR cable, and boom, and we're ready to go. So now we're all connected. Now what do we do, right? So if you hit the record button, you're going to see that we have only one external track now, okay? Because we only have one microphone plugged in. If we plugged in another microphone to the right side, the right input jack, well, we would have 2 signals coming in and out, right? So here you can also change, you can also put up or put down the sensitivity, the mic sensitivity. We're going to put it up here, and you're good to go. You see that if I bump the top of the microphone, it's picking up audio from the microphone, right? So we're good to go. So this is just another option. If you don't want to use the internal microphone as a part of the Tascam, you can connect an XLR microphone and you can use an XLR microphone, okay? One thing that I would say is that I do, in a sense, recommend using, if you're in a quiet space and a space where people can sit close to each other, I would recommend using the internal microphones because you get a little bit less of a static noise. I have found that the Tascam, when you do use the external microphones like this, you get a little bit of a little bit of white noise in the back because the processor inside the Tascam, this specific Tascam, it's good, but it gives you a little bit of white noise when you actually connect an external microphone. So this is still a really good option, but me myself, I would recommend using the internal microphones up on top more often than not, just because you get a little bit of a cleaner signal. But that's it, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. And like I said, we went over kind of the basics here, what we use when it comes to recording audio and oral histories with the Tascam. But if you have questions and you are using the Tascam and you're troubleshooting a little bit, you can reach out to our team. You can reach out to me and we can head over there and we can troubleshoot any issues together that you may be having, or any questions you might have about the actual Tascam field recorder or recording audio through this. But for all intents and purposes, that is the Tascam field recorder, and we're really excited for you all to be jumping into this. So let's head back over to our regular recording setup. Okay, everybody, so we hope you enjoyed the tutorial on how to use the actual Tascam field recorder, okay, and connecting an XLR microphone to it. Like I said, whatever works best for you, go ahead and use that. If you want to connect the external actual microphone, or if you want to use the internal microphones. But we hope you learned a lot on how to use this and how to use this to capture a good oral history as you move forward in the grant deliverables. We've got Katie Coldiron here, our digital archivist, okay, and we're just really excited to see you all move forward and move into the next year with you. So if you have any questions, like we said, feel free to contact us.
Thank you guys so much, and please feel free to check out our other training videos related to digitizing and oral histories.
Yes. Have a good one, everybody.